Hi there guys, welcome back into my studio. My name's Conor and I am a wildlife artist that specialises in graphite and Scratchboard. So today in this video we're going to be looking at how to create line art. Right then guys, so I wanted to start by showing you and telling you a little bit about the app that I use to create my line art. So basically going all the way back to when I first started, I've always used Procreate to create my line arts. But it doesn't mean that you have to use Procreate or that you can't use these techniques when doing a different method of creating your line art. So if I wasn't using Procreate, normally what I would do would be to print off my reference photo and then just get a piece of tracing paper, put it over the top and then just draw around that. And to be honest, going all the way back to the very beginning, that was a method that I first used when I was doing things like my spray paint art and a few first initial drawings. But today I wanted to give you, it's going to be a very quick whistle stop tour of how to actually use the app. But I do find it really good and really helpful for creating my line art. It makes things just go a little bit quicker. So you can already see a few of my old images that I've created on here. So when you first get the app, you'll load up the app by just using and just pressing on the app icon. Now yours will be generally empty because you won't have had any projects created yet. So initially what we need to do is create a canvas. And this is going to be the size of the artwork really that you want to be working on. So you just tap this little X up here and it gives you a list of canvases. Now you do get a few that are preset and then you can create your own if you want to. I won't go into too much detail about how to do that, but generally for this one we're going to want a square canvas. That was the image I had in mind for this piece. So I've got this preset down here. It's 16 by 16 inches, but it's going to work at either size. So I'll just load that up here. And this is the canvas that we're going to be working on. Now it is movable and you can rotate it just to make it a bit easier to work with. So now that we've got our canvas, we need to get our reference photo onto the canvas. Now to do that, you're just going to click on the tool icon up here. It looks like a little wrench, and then it says insert a photo. So when you click on insert a photo, it's going to bring up your library of photos. And then you're just going to choose the one that you want and import that directly in. So now that we've got our reference photo imported into the app, it will put it onto a new layer above this canvas. And if you want to see your layers, just click on this button up here and it shows that we've got this background, which is our canvas, and then just this layer, which is a photo. Now make sure you can select between multiple layers. So if you were to add a few more layers on top, you can select different layers. So because we want to be editing the photo at this point, we're just going to make sure that we're clicked on the layer that's referenced to the photo. Because at the minute, this isn't the photo that we want. It's the photo that we want, but it's not the right size. We want to crop down and just use this eye here. Now this is a free to use reference photo. I got it from Pixabay, and I'll leave a link to that down in the description so that you can download it if you want to try this yourself. But this is actually going to be well, it already is a Scratchboard tutorial on how to create a tiger's eye. So if you do want to use this method to use your line art, that's going to work as well. So now that we've got this, like I say, our canvas in a square, we're going to want our reference photo cropped down to incorporate the area that we want to draw. So when you're on your reference photo, if you just click this icon up here, this is like your transform tool. And all we're going to do is zoom all the way in or crop this image all the way down. I'm just going to have to zoom out so we can see because it is quite a large reference photo. Now, if we were to untick this transform tool now with this area outside of the canvas, it will automatically crop that away. So just make sure you are ready when you unclick it to lose that part of the reference image, because at the minute we can move our reference image around within the canvas. But if the second I unclick it, and then if I went to move it again, we've lost the edging of that image, which is okay for this one because we want it even further zoomed in. So that's a rough crop. So we're probably going to be cropping it down a little bit further. So I'll just unselect that, and this is where we're at the moment. Now what I like to do, because I want this piece fairly centered, so I want the eye to be roughly in the middle of this canvas, I'm just going to put on what we call a drawing guide. So again, we're just going to use these tools across the top. Now you're going to click again on this wrench icon, and then you're going to go across to canvas, and then you'll see it says drawing guide. So we're just going to tick drawing guide on, and you'll see a lot of little almost squares like you would if you were using the grid method come up over your image. But at the minute, these grid sizes, I don't know if you can see, they're really, really small. And that's not going to be helpful to try and help us center this piece. So we're just going to press edit, and then you get a lot of different other options down here. So we're going to switch on to symmetry, and then options to make it a quadrant grid. And then we're just going to boost the thickness of our line and boost the opacity of our line. Up here you can change the color of the line, so you can make it sort of a bit clearer to see. So let's say, for example, if we put it on pink, you should be able to see that line right in the center. So when we go off the drawing guide, we can see roughly where we are in relation to the canvas. So for me, I'd probably want this zoomed in a little bit more. So I'm just gonna crop it down a little bit further and reposition it. And I think that's probably gonna be where I want this final image to be. So now that I know that we're centered, I'm just gonna take my drawing guide off. And this is our cropped image that we're gonna be using for our reference photo. So at the minute, all we've got now is a reference photo. Right then, now that we've got our reference photo and this is the right size that we want our reference photo to be, next step is creating the actual line art itself. So what you don't want to do, so at the minute you can see that we've only got two layers. We've got the background layer, and then we've got our photo layer. Now, if we were to draw directly onto the photo layer, there's going to be no way of removing the background underneath it, the actual reference photo, so that we've got just our line art. And at the minute, all we want is our line art. So what I'm going to do, or the first step is what you need to do, is insert another layer over the top of this. So you're going to go onto this layer tool just here, and we're going to click the add button. And that's going to create a layer over the top of the photo layer. So now if we're to draw on this layer and then remove the photo or hide the photo, we've still got our drawing. So it's almost working. This layer, if you can imagine, is almost like your tracing paper that you're putting over the top of your image. So we'll just undo so that goes away. So before I do my line art, I like to pick out areas that I think are going to be either areas that are almost key interest areas. So these are going to be, especially in Scratchboard, which this is going to turn out to be, I need to work out which areas of the piece are going to be the darkest, because I can't go any darker on Scratchboard than the actual black of the board itself. So these are areas that we're going to want to keep perfectly black or not put any detail in as much, just to give it some more realism. So for me, the areas are the pupil itself, the sort of recesses on this corner of the eye, and also a few areas in these black stripes. All of these are going to be key areas that we need to pay attention to. And same again, if I just change to a blue, we're going to need to mark out areas that we think are going to be the brightest areas, because again, these areas are limited with how bright the board can potentially go. Now, the brightest white that you're going to be able to have is the white of the clay underneath the black. So these are areas that we're going to need to pay attention to as well. So this area down here is definitely one of the brightest. This part just underneath the eye, and also just a couple of sections. Now, not all of these sections are the brightest, just a few of them. So probably this one, and that one there. Maybe also this one in the corner. So these are key areas that we want to be the brightest parts on the board. So these are all things that go into my mind when I'm creating my line arts as well. Now, something else that I need to pay attention to is the direction of the fur. So if we just make this green, just so that it picks up on camera. Now, fur direction is key, really, in creating a more realistic picture, because it's going to help the viewer understand the flow of the fur. It's going to help give the impression of underlying structures like bone, muscle, and that sort of thing as well. So we really need to try and pay attention to where the fur texture's going and the fur direction's going. And I try and do that initially when I'm creating these line arts. So this area down here is probably going to be the most complex in the piece, because there's a lot of different areas that the fur goes to. So when we zoom in, and the reason I like using Procreate is that we can really zoom into these images. I don't know if I skipped over this, but the way you change the color of whichever tool you're using. So we're still using that 6B pencil on ours. You just click on this little green, or it will be the color of whatever color you're using, and then you can pick any color at all, and it will show in this top corner which one we're going to be using. Okay. So around here is almost the actual color, the hue, and then down here is the saturation almost. So looking here, when we zoom in, the fur is quite complicated. So it comes in this area, it comes down, this area comes down, but on this area it comes across, and then it curves down. And on this area it comes across, and then it starts to curve down, and on this area it's fairly straight across, and then it starts to go up. So you can almost see the sort of recess of everything pointing towards this sort of indented area just in the corner of this eye. And it's the same in other areas as well. So obviously this area is more clear and it's a bit easier to follow because it's nice and straight. So it just pulls across here, this area across here, and it almost ends up curving round the whole piece. And then here it comes down. These areas are a lot clearer, and it comes up. Now these are things that I want to create in my final line art image almost, because I'm not going to have the photo, well, I'm going to have the photo next to me, but it's not always easy to sort of look across and work out whether you're a bit shallower or a bit steeper with how you're putting your fur in. So generally I will make marks in my line art showing where the fur texture is, or the fur direction is, sorry. Now you can do it a different way if you feel like you don't need the fur texture. What you could do is almost draw around these areas. So if all of these lines are going to make things really confusing and hard to follow, another option would be just to draw them as shapes. So you could just draw them like that, and then you would know this area is a black area, black fur stripe. This area around this outline is going to be sort of this mid-tone. Down here is going to be a bright white, and you would just follow it along like that. Now the final thing I like to do on my reference photos, I'll just change to a yellow just to make it easy to see. Actually we'll go orange. Is I like to make a reference, especially with more complex images, of where these black areas are and where these white areas are. Or let's say, for example, there's a complex pattern of spots or a complex pattern of stripes or folds in the skin. Things that are going to, maybe when the image isn't there, is going to look a lot more confusing when it's on the board itself. And for these areas, I'm just going to put either and it's what I've done on this piece. I would just put a B in this black stripe, or a W here, or a W here, or a B here, and the B stands for black and the W stands for white. So I would know when this image goes away and I'm left with just the line art, it would show me which areas are meant to be the black stripes and which areas are meant to be the white stripes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort of erase all of this. This is going to go away, and I'm going to bring up and show you my line art that I actually created for this piece. So I hope this has helped shed some light on how I would create line art, or how you can create line art. Like I say, you don't have to have an iPad or the app Procreate to do this. If you wanted to, you can just use the tried and tested method of printing off your reference image and putting your tracing paper over the top of that. But this was just a little video to show you the tips and tricks that I use, and I just find it helps me create a more accurate line art, and then with all those other features, the different colours, it just helps me understand it and not get lost when I'm creating a picture. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll see you again in the next one.